Well, you are not going to want to miss this conversation with Melissa Johnson. She is the founder of Clean Life, Clean Home. Her story is powerful. I will leave it at that. Here we go. Let's get started.
Here, we want to show you what's possible in the world of sobriety. We introduce you to the various tools, programs, and resources available because there are way more options than you may even realize. We want you to find the one that works for you.
And we do it through people. People who share their pathway to recovery and will help you find your path to freedom. Because getting sober can feel hard enough. You don't have to do it alone. I'm Sarah Roberts.
And I'm Roger DeVoe, and this is Sobriety Starts Here.
Melissa Johnson, this is an honor to be chatting with you. I am so excited for this conversation. You and I have known each other for a little while, but we haven't really had an opportunity to truly connect. So I feel like this is so awesome that I get this chance to almost sit down and have coffee with you and have this conversation to get a little bit deeper on your story. But before we do that, what I'd like to do, Melissa, is ask you a little bit about Clean Life, Clean Home, which is your baby. It's the project that you have built in your recovery. And so I want to ask you, what is Clean Life, Clean Home, and who is it for?
Okay, so Clean Life, Clean Home is a nonprofit that I started a year into my recovery. And it is basically I choose one mom or dad. It's for parents that are in recovery that have like really turned their life around for them and their kids. I most of them are nominees. Like people will nominate a parent that they know that has like worked really hard to turn their life around. And I'll email them and I'll let them know, hi, I'm Melissa. I'm with Clean Life, Clean Home. What I do is I sit down, I interview them, and I basically hear their story. I take a little journal with me and I ask them, what was it like? What happened? What is it like today? What's recovery like today? How is your relationship with your children? What was your rock bottom? What was your drug of choice? And basically it's just a little interview and I take notes. And then I share their story on social media, on the website, on Facebook, on Instagram. And then I get a group of volunteers together and we clean their house for free, normally when they're at work. So they come home and they have a really nice, clean house. And I give them each a bucket of cleaning supplies. I put like some Windex in there, some Comet, Fabuloso, a toilet bowl cleaner, just stuff like to have around the house. It can get expensive to get cleaning supplies. So it's just they get to come home to a clean house, then they have their own cleaning supplies, and then they have a $50 gift card to Walmart too, so to get whatever they need. And then I also ask them a lot of times if there's anything that they do need around the house. For instance, I had two moms that needed a dining room table that I was able to provide for them. One of them needed a bed. I was able to provide a bed. I think that's all I can think of right now, but just like little things like that. Like I might ask them what it is that they need and I find a way to get it for them. So
That is amazing. What a service. And it's I talk a lot about in my work, when we clean up our external environment, it really does so much for our internal. Like you can almost hack the system. You can do it either the reverse order, starting with the inside and then going to the outside. But I find it sometimes easier to start with our external environment in order for us to feel better, because you look around and all of a sudden, if your place is clean and it's looking so tidy and organized, you're less willing to sort of, let things go. And it's such they say that it's such a reflection of what's going on inside. When you look at your external environment, it is such a reflection of what's going on inside of us. So if we can have a tidy exterior, that's not always the case. I mean, lots of people are perfectionists and then their insides are crazy, and we totally get that, and I can relate to that. But I think there's a big power to that. So I think what you're doing is incredible, and I love that that people are nominated. So how does that process work? So people in the community nominate specific people?
yes. Okay. So for example, whenever I decided that I was going to start doing this, like I just came up with it out of nowhere. I'm like, this is Clean Life, Clean Home. When I started doing it, my kids were still in foster care. And I had told the foster mom and the dad what I was doing. And I said, I need a mom that is in recovery that, has turned their life around. And they are a part of Life Church. And they said they knew the perfect mom. And she just happened to be a grandmother also who was about to adopt her grandchildren. Because of her recovery, she was able to adopt her grandchildren while her son struggled with his own addiction. And basically what I did was I called her up. I'm like, hi, I'm Melissa. Can you tell me your recovery story? And then I'm going to clean your house. Nobody never heard of it. I know she was kind of like, what? Okay, sure. And so I just show up at her house, and so I cleaned her house for her, and then she nominated one of her sponsees. And then when I went and cleaned for her sponsee, she nominated somebody else also. And then like last year, I think it was like around September, I put on Facebook that I was looking for some nominees in the Norman, Oklahoma City area. And a girl that I used to work with at a sports bar here, lives down in Dallas now, nominated Rebecca Boyd. She was the mom that I cleaned for in October, who I got a dining room table for. And I just turns out that Rebecca lives like a couple of minutes from me. Our kids go to the same school. She's now on the Clean Life Clean Home board. So she's a board member now. So yeah.
Oh my goodness. And even knowing that you have a board. So this thing that you said, it just kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, you were cleaning homes. You have a business that you clean homes. So this isn't just
We just started cleaning houses because I knew my kids were coming home and I needed like a little bit of a flexible schedule because of all of the requirements that I had to do from the program that I'm in. Like I had to go to court once a month, and I was having to do like a certain amount of meetings and random drug testing, and then stuff for DHS and counseling. There's all kinds of stuff that I was having to do, and so I was looking for something a little bit more flexible, a schedule. So I just started cleaning homes, and then I was with my life coach one day, and kind of having a little bit of a pity party. My kids are still in foster care, and I'm like, I'm just a waitress. I just clean houses, and my kids are in foster care, and when am I going to get my life together? And she was like, you need to start paying it forward. You need to start doing something for some women in recovery that have been in your place, maybe like clean their house. And I was like, oh, Clean Life Clean Home. She's like, yes. And I said, okay, let's do it. Get out of my head a little bit.
Isn't that amazing when those moments, that sort of divine intervention or whatever, the spirit that moves you or whatever comes through, that all of a sudden it's just like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, like light bulb moments that happen. So you've touched a little bit on what kind of happened in your life. So I would love, if you wouldn't mind, for people that are listening, for you to go deeper on your story and maybe start at the beginning and let us know how you got to where you are now doing Clean Life, Clean Home.
Okay, well, I struggled with alcohol addiction for many, many years, and it started off pretty young. I always had that feeling of not fitting in, something's wrong with me, and what I found out later on is that I struggle with extreme anxiety, which like I used to call my little breakdowns. One day my sister was like, you're not having a breakdown, you're having an anxiety attack. I'm like, oh, that's why the walls are closing in right now. That's why I feel like I'm going crazy. And I didn't realize for a long time that I struggle with anxiety, and self-medicating with alcohol. It helps to quiet the voices. It helps to not care what people thought. What were people thinking about me? Were they talking about me? Like, I just don't care. And I suffered consequences, early on. And I knew that my drinking was not normal. I knew that I was suffering consequences that should make me stop drinking, whenever.
Like, can you share any of those consequences?
Oh yeah. Whenever I was 21 years old, I always drank and drove. I always thought that I was okay to drink and drive. And I'm very lucky that I did not kill anybody or kill myself, because when I was 21 years old, I was in the middle of a blackout. I was in and out of a blackout. And I remember looking at the light, and it was green. And the next thing I know, I was waking up to glass shattering, and I had red light, and I hit somebody. And that was my first DUI. And a few years later, I was 21 years old. I had totaled my car that time, and I don't even know what happened to the people that I hit. Like, I didn't have insurance, and then I lost my driver's license. And when I was 24 years old, I got another car accident at another intersection in another blackout. And that time I got out of my car, and I was really close to my apartment. I just got out of my car and I just ran home to avoid a DUI from the middle of an intersection. Like, I had glass out in my face. I was bleeding. And that was, I remember thinking that I needed to make a change. Like, obviously there's a problem here. The police did show up to my apartment like a week later and picked me up and arrested me because they found my phone bill that I had paid that day. It was in the passenger seat. So they were able to track down my phone number and my address and where I lived, and were able to come pick me up. And those are just a couple of the consequences. There was public intoxes. There was um, a couple more DUIs. I got my third DUI whenever I was 32, about 6 years ago. This year will be 6 years. So there's consequences, always consequences. But I still always felt, I knew that I had consequences, but I knew that alcohol also made me feel okay. So I was willing to suffer those consequences as long as I could feel that feeling of being okay in my own skin, because I did try to stop drinking a couple of times, but it was really painful. My skin was crawling. I would feel sick, and it was just uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable in my own skin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can totally relate to that story. I don't know if you know, my story is similar. I drank and drove all the time as well, and felt like that, people would say, "Are you sure you're okay?" And I was like, "Of course I'm okay. Like, I do this all the time. This is nothing." And how shameful to even admit to that now, to know that I did that. I put so many other people at risk. I could have killed people, and thank God I have the same story as you that I didn't. But my DUI filled me with so much shame, and I had to quit a job because I traveled for work, and I needed my car for my job. And so that became the rock bottom for me. But I understand that it might not have been under different circumstances. In fact, I had lost my license several years prior to that, just because I was sitting in a parking lot with the car on, and they charged me with care and control. And I was like, well, I'm not driving. Like, this isn't a DUI. So I looked at, meanwhile, I had been driving up until 10 minutes prior to that, before that. And so I can totally understand that feeling where you just, yes, there are consequences, but we can just keep brushing them aside, because the notion to live our lives without that feeling, without that comfort of alcohol, like, that is way too terrifying. I would rather, deal with these kinds of issues that I just have to clean up now and again, and all of that, than ever think about getting rid of this drug that I need so desperately. So I can totally relate to that.
It was always, I would get in trouble, and then they would send me to jail, and it just kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, so I'm going to jail for a few days, a couple of weeks, like, I just didn't care. There's a couple of times that I was in jail. One time I was in jail almost a month, and like, I just didn't care. I got right back out and started doing the exact same thing. I'm just like, okay.
Oh my gosh. Can you share with us what was the experience for you of being in jail? So obviously it wasn't something where it helped you to see, the error of your ways, or it didn't help you to get sober. Was there anything in jail that was helpful to you as far as recovery goes?
Um, Not really. No.
Wow.
There was not ever a thought of, of course, once I'm in jail, I'm like, I'm going to change my life, but then as soon as I get out, I'm like, I'm free, I'm going right back to the exact same thing that I was doing before with the same people. I'm still, surrounding myself with the same people, places, and things, there was never, there was just never the thought that maybe I need to stop until I saw the damage that I was doing to my children. And
So tell me, how old were you when you had your kids?
I had my son whenever I was almost 28. I was 27, and then I had my daughter when I was 30. I had him in January 2008, and then my daughter in August of 2010.
All right, so keep going with your story. So now you've got kids, and you are still experienced. So you clearly have had a DUI when your kids were young.
Yes, and they weren't in the car. They weren't in the car that day, but I did drink with them in the car multiple times. They spent a lot of time with the babysitters, and whenever I had my DUI in 2012. That was my third one. That was a felony, and I did try to stop drinking, but for they gave me a choice that I could have 5 years probation, or I could have 18 months in prison, and I wanted to take prison. because I couldn't imagine not drinking for 5 years, you know, out free. I'm like, put me in prison because that is the only time that I will be able to stay sober. That's it. And, and my sister, was like, what about your kids? What about my kids? I can barely take care of them as it is. You take them. You can do a better job. My sister doesn't have any addiction problems. And so I was just like, you take them, they deserve better. They deserve better than me. Like, I don't even know why I have these children. Like, I can't do this. But I chose probation, and I did try a couple of times, trying to get sober, and it was just hard. It was just really hard. And
Can you
um,
share, how did you try? What were the methods that you used to try to get sober? Like, did you go to meetings or?
just not drinking. I
Mm,
tried just not drinking at all. And I did try going to meetings and, sitting in the very back, listening to people's stories, but I just didn't want to. Like, I really just didn't want to. It was
yeah.
kind of like, okay, like I have to because I'm on probation. I'm like, I got these people breathing down my neck, but I just don't want to, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can take a lot of pain. I can take a lot of consequences. But in 2013, I left some brownies that had marijuana in them. I left them out on the counter, and my son ate one. And um, I had taken him to the movie theater, and we ended up having to leave the movies. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Because he was like, I don't feel good. I don't know what's wrong with me. And I said, did you eat anything at home? Maybe like some chocolate? And he was like, no, no. But as soon as we got home, I saw that he had eaten a brownie. And they actually, surprisingly, weren't mine. I actually had left them out. The couple of girlfriends were going to take them. But he ended up going to school a couple of days later and told the teacher that he ate a brownie with medicine in it, and it made him sick. And and then Child Protective Services came to my house. I told him that yes, there was marijuana in the brownie, and they took my kids. And I passed all the drug tests. Like, they cut hair out of my head and they gave me all the drug tests, and I passed everything. I said, I have issues with alcohol and I'm trying to work on that right now because I had just gone on probation for my third DUI, and I had a pending child neglect charge felony, which is the reason why they took them. Back in 2012, before I got my third DUI, had decided that I was going to move down to Dallas. I was going to leave Oklahoma and get away because Oklahoma is the problem, and take my kids. But I was going to stop. Me and my boyfriend had been fighting, so I stopped to go hide out at an apartment. I drank way too much, passed out. My kids were playing outside, and so the neighbor downstairs um, called the cops on me because she couldn't wake me up. She's like, "Why are these kids outside playing? The mom's upstairs. She's passed out." The police showed up. They ended up taking me to a mental hospital because they thought that I was trying to commit suicide because I had told him that we were hiding out from my boyfriend. We had been fighting. My car was all packed up with clothes and all kinds of stuff. So they took me to the mental hospital where I stayed for 5 days. There was they decided that it was an isolated incident because my children were put into a temporary DHS custody with my stepdad. And then after I got released, they gave me my kids back, and I went down to Dallas, which I got a DUI right after that. And so whenever I had gone to jail as part of my probation for my third DUI, I had 3 weekends in jail. They said, you have a felony child neglect charge in Oklahoma. And I had no idea. I didn't even know about it. It was from that day. So when when CPS came to get my kids and asked me about the brownie, they saw that I had a pending child neglect charge. And I was already on probation for a felony DUI, had this pending felony child neglect charge. So they took my kids. And I I was mad. I was so mad. I'm like, this is not my fault. I didn't do this. This is not my brownie. This is not my fault. Like, no responsibility, and just mad. Kind of like I felt found out, because I had to go to my dad and my stepmom. Hey, my kids are in a foster home right now. I don't know where they are. Would you be willing to take them? This is what happened. And luckily they were willing to take them. And I drank a couple of times after that. but I ended up running into a woman in AA that I happened to wait on at the restaurant that I work at. And I just spilled my guts to her. I'm like, I am miserable right now. You know, she's like, it's so good to see you. I'm like, no, my life is miserable. Like, it's chaotic. My kids are in foster care. Like, it's a mess. And I was sitting at the bar one night, and it was the bar that I would always go to. And I remember I'm sitting there drinking. The bar is full, and I'm miserable, and I can't get drunk. I can't not feel what I'm feeling. And so I texted her, and I just like, my kids are in foster care, and I'm at the bar drinking, and I can't stop, and I don't understand why. And she was like, well, because you're an alcoholic, and it's okay. And it's just like so simple. Like, you're an alcoholic, but it's gonna be okay. You don't have to do this anymore. I get all emotional, but and after that, I started working the steps. I asked her to be my sponsor. I started working the steps. I started going to the meetings, and I had February, I think it's February 10th is whenever I had gotten sober, and then I got my kids back in May of 2015. May of 2014, they were gone 6 months, and then a whole year goes by, and by May of 2016, I was really struggling. My son was struggling. I was having a hard time setting boundaries with the person that I was dating, with my sponsor, just really a lack of control over my life and my recovery. And and I drank again, and I relapsed, and it lasted 24 hours. 24 hours. Okay. On Sunday evening, Sunday afternoon, I was at work, and I told my coworker I had kind of like hit this like this wall, I had this break, and I told her that I didn't want my kids anymore, and I was going to drink that night. And she's like, no, 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 you don't mean that. And I said, absolutely, I do mean this. 24 hours later, my kids were being removed from my home by the police. And
Uh, I know. Take a minute. Feel free. Take a minute. Take a drink of water. Take a moment. I mean, this is huge. And I'm so proud of you for being able to put the words and string them together. I don't have children, and the closest I have is a niece and nephew, and that love that you feel for those people, but yet, you know, stuck in that addiction where you literally want to believe that you can say the words, I don't want my kids, I want to drink, like choosing alcohol over them seems today, now that that you are in recovery, and you have some solid foundation, it seems ludicrous to think that you could think that way. But
yeah.
when we are mired, that's where our brains are at. So when you're ready, go ahead and keep going.
Well, it was that day that I learned the power of my words, the power of my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very aware now. But anyway, so I did went out that night, and I drank, and then I just started drinking the next morning too, because I don't want to think, I don't want to feel. Um, and there was a lot of issues with my son. He wasn't allowed to be at school past 10:30. His behavior was completely out of control. And so basically he was a part of my relapse. I got a tattoo that day. I got my nose pierced, and he was with me the whole time. And I would like sit him on the sidewalk. I'm like, sit right here for a second. I'm going to go in, I'm going to drink. But I had an interlock on my car. So we were just walking up and down Main Street in Norman, Oklahoma. And I ran into his karate instructor, who my son would listen to. And I kind of just passed my son on to him. I said, he doesn't listen to me. He's out of control. He listens to you. Will you just take him right now? Just let him play in the studio. So took him in the studio, and he said I could set up a session with my wife. She's a psychologist, which we never did because obviously my kids got taken away. But I went, after I'd left him at the karate studio, I went a little nuts at the bar, just bar hopping and just drinking. And a friend of mine found me at one of the bars and took me home. And the guy that I was dating had went and gotten my daughter from the YMCA because I had left her there. And they wanted to know where my son was. They said, well, where is he at? And I said, I don't know where he is. I was so intoxicated, I could not remember that he was at the karate studio. I didn't know. And they said, we need to call the police to report him missing. I said, yeah, we do, because I don't know where he is. So we call the police. We have the Oklahoma University police at my house, the local police department at my house, swarming the neighborhood looking for him. I can't remember anything. I can't even remember my phone number. I remember sitting there like trying so hard to remember my phone number. And he's like, "You don't know your phone number? Really?" I'm like, I don't know. And there are police everywhere. Well, my son um, calls my cell phone and says, "I'm ready to come home now." And it all just came back to me. I said, "My son's at the karate studio." But by then he's like, "I just want to let you know we have called DHS. They are on the way. They are taking your children." And I had my sponsor there at the time I had a friend of mine, my sponsor, and my grand sponsor at the time. And they helped pack up my kids' clothes. They packed their bags. And so I stood out in front of my house with my sponsor and all the police, and my kids were walking out with their bags, and they told my kids to give me a hug and kiss, and so they each gave me a hug, and then they put him back in the back of the police car, and they drove away, and it was like the worst day ever.
I can't even talk because
It was horrible.
yeah, I cannot even imagine that. Okay, let's take a deep breath. I can't even imagine that. Do your children remember that day quite well, like vividly? I mean, is this something that you guys talk about?
Yeah, I let
Mhm.
them talk about it openly. My daughter doesn't really talk about it as much, but she does bring it up every once in a while. She will talk about the way that I cried that day. She said, "Mommy, I never heard you cry like that." She was like, "It was very weird because you're mommy and you were crying so hard."
Mm.
But my son remembers it. He doesn't really like to talk about it as much, but every once in a while he will. But they remember.
Mhm. I'm glad that it feels like there is some open communication about it so that they've worked through a lot of that. How old were they when they were taken away?
Um, okay, so that was in 2015. So my daughter was 4, like almost 5, and then my son, I guess was 7. I think that's right, 7. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, they're young, but they're also old enough that, oh my gosh, they're feeling this, they're experiencing this as something that must have been just so confusing at the time. It must have been devastating for your entire family. Where are your parents in all of this?
Um, my dad and my stepmom, they are here. They just live about 15 minutes away. My mom, in Texas, and my sister's down in Texas too. So they were not able to take my children. So some a Life Church pastor and his wife that I had met through a friend of mine in AA were stepped up and took my children. So, and I had known them a little bit before they got my children, but not really well. We had hung out with them a couple of times. So,
Were you able to visit your children while they were in the other people's care?
mm, yes and no. We we had a very difficult relationship for a little while, and it was I was able to see my children once a week. Um, and then it was once a week for an hour. We ended up doing therapeutic visitation for 3 months, which is 1 hour once a week at a counselor's office with a counselor present. So we did that for three months. But and then I had visits with DHS. It was difficult. It was a difficult time for sure.
So were you sober during that time after the kids were taken?
The day after my kids got taken away is my sobriety date. I get all emotional thinking about it, but no, I told my mom. I called my mom and I told her what had happened, and I just told her that I'm not going to make it through this. The pain is too much to bear. I can't do this again. I've messed up too bad, too much. And she said, "No, you are going to make it through this. You're going to make it through this one day at a time." And something happened when I went to court because I had already been through this. I'm in the same courtroom with the same judge, with the same lawyer, trying to figure out where my kids are going to live again. I kind of looked around like, this is it. Like, this is what it's always going to be. It's always going to continue to be like this. And I decided that I was going to do whatever it took. I was going to do whatever it took to, if they sent me to prison, I would go to prison. Whatever. I just felt like, um, the first couple of days, like the women in AA, they would not let me be alone, for obvious reasons. You know, I was very hopeless. They didn't know if I was going to drink, but I tried to hurt myself. They didn't know. A friend of mine asked me if I had a daily reflections book, and I had told her no. So she just handed it to me, and I opened up to the day that it was. It was like May 20th, 2 days after my kids got taken away, and it was said one day at a time. And I took a picture of it and I sent it to my mom, and I said, "Look, it says one day at a time today." And I felt like a higher power, that I felt this overwhelming feeling like it was just going to be okay. Everything was going to be okay. It wasn't going to be easy. Hell no. It was going to be so freaking hard. And there were days where I just could barely even get out of bed, and I missed my kids. And I felt like a failure, you know, I felt like a disappointment. I was embarrassed. But I, when I read that, I was like, okay, you know what? And then the fog cleared, and I felt that I felt like spirit was talking to me, telling me that I had to share my story. So it was kind of like that rock bottom had to happen. It had to happen just exactly the way that it did. I had to feel all that pain. I had to go through all that, because it was the last little bit of that chapter, that really long chapter. The new chapter was starting. And that chapter was recovering out loud, helping other women, and lighting the path for other women and other people in recovery, other parents. So that voice that said, you know, this time is going to be different. You can drink this time. It's going to be different. That voice was replaced with, now you have to share now I have to share my story. Now you have to share your story, Melissa. And I had this little argument with spirit, like, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, I got to keep up this picture, you know, like everything is perfect. And I can't share my story openly because I'm a felon. My kids are in foster care. Like, I can't do that. Well, obviously we see who won that argument.
Beautifully done. Look at what you've done to turn your life around. And I do find that so often, I mean, I think so many of us that are, you know, me included, where that those little rock bottoms that could have been rock bottoms were not enough for me. I had to get to a place where I truly felt like you were saying, that you felt hopeless, where you feel like there is nowhere else to go here. Either if I knowing truly in the depth of your soul that if you continue going on this road, it is either death or more destruction, or just completely ruining everything, versus I know it's going to be hard work and it's going to suck, but I have to go over here. I have to try this other way, because the way I've been trying is just not working. And I have to give that other option, you know, a chance. And I agree. I think that sometimes we just have to, it has to be that bad. It has to get that bad. For other people, it doesn't have to get that bad. And you know, and that's what's beautiful about sharing all of these stories. For some people, you know, Jane Lynch, you know, she says, you know, she became an alcoholic on a couple of Miller Lights. You know, I mean, that was not my story. I was a heavy drinker. Clearly you were a heavy drinker. And
Yes.
you know, and we had to hit those really big rock bottoms that everybody would point to and go, yeah, that's a rock bottom. But right, but I mean, we had to go through it. We had to go through to finally heed that message. And now look at what you're able to do to inspire other women to know that no matter what, no matter how bad it gets, because I mean, not a lot of women are going to have gone to where you had to go to. I mean, not that many women are going to have that experience where they've had to go to jail. I mean, you know, and lose their kids. This is really fucking hard stuff. And yet you've been able to do it. And look at what you've been able to do. So, I mean, if you can do it, you know, me over here that's drinking, you know, a few glasses of Chardonnay and kind of wondering, wait a minute, am I numbing with this stuff? Am I using this in a way that's unhealthy? Am I relying on this? I mean, even these women are going to be able to take something from your story. So we don't have to necessarily go to those huge, obvious, big, blatant rock bottoms to know that we have a problem. But what the beauty of this is, of hearing your story, is to know that even if you do, there is still hope. It's never, ever, ever, ever done. It's never over unless we say it's over. So, oh my gosh, all the power to you. So then after you, so obviously you must have gotten your kids back. So when did that happen?
I got my kids back a year later. It was almost a year to the date that they came home, and me and the foster parents were able to mend our relationship because it was difficult. And we still see them. My kids still see their kids, and it was hard. But you know what? I'm glad it was hard too, because you know what? I appreciated it more. And not that the road has been easy since I got home. You know, it has not been easy at all. But we just keep moving forward. And my son has been the most difficult relationship to mend. You know, he didn't trust me. He was upset with me. He was angry. He didn't trust me, and it was difficult to earn that trust back. And but I'm glad that it was difficult to earn his trust back, because our bond now is so much stronger. He's extremely proud of Clean Life Clean Home. Like, he knows all about the Clean Life Clean Home. Both my kids have been on cleanings. They know exactly, you know, what it is, what it's for, what I do. And he's so proud. He's so proud of it. He is in regular school now, but he did get in some trouble. He did go inpatient twice from the time that he um, came home permanently. And so it's been a year since he's been inpatient, but he was in a school that was half inpatient and half school. So like, parents weren't allowed in there except for counseling. There was like one-on-one counseling, group therapy, family therapy. Um,
And this was because of being taken by
I feel like
into foster care. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like the whole being gone for a year, coming back home, dealing with that anger towards me, just so much change, you know. And I almost feel like he felt abandoned by me, but he also felt abandoned by the foster parents. There was just a lot of emotions going on, a lot of changes, and a lot and it was just difficult for him. But he said that one of the days where they had the group therapy, that the teacher got the kids together and said, today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about our stories. We're going to share what has brought us here today. How was life? You know, how is it that we got here? And he was like, Mom, nobody wanted to tell their story. Nobody talked. And he was like, so guess what I did? I said, well, what did you do? And he said, I told my story. I told him about you and alcohol and dad in prison. And I told him about the brownie. I told him about foster care and DHS. I told him everything. And he said, and guess what happened? I said, what? He's like, everybody told their story. Everybody told their story. He was like, mine was a worse story, but everybody told their story. And I was like, oh, baby, you keep telling your story. You keep telling it because people need to hear it. You made all those people not feel alone. You know, you're not the only one. And how amazing that is. You tell that story, all of it. Don't ever feel ashamed. Keep telling it.
Oh man, what a way that you as a mother has inspired. Oh my gosh, because it's just like we were talking about earlier. His story might have been the worst story, but so that meant the other kids were looking at it like, oh, well, I can share mine then. Like I can talk about it. So wow, what a way to inspire. Incredible.
Yeah, it was neat.
Oh, well done. So I would love to know, how can people get in touch with you if they want to nominate somebody for Clean Life Clean Home? I know part of your dream for growing Clean Life Clean Home is franchising it across the nation and hopefully across the globe. I think it's an amazing initiative that needs to be in every city, every township, every area across the entire world. But for now, how can people get in touch with you? How can they learn more about your story? How can they connect with you? And how can they learn more about Clean Life Clean Home?
Okay, so they can go to cleanlifecleanhome.com. That's the website. You can also find me on Facebook. You can just search Clean Life Clean Home. You can also find me at Facebook. My truth starts here, because a few months after I got my kids taken away in 2015, I started a blog called mytruthstartshere.org. I don't write on it anymore, but you can still go on there and read the story. But I started writing on a new blog called thisismelissa.com. And yeah, so those are the places. And I'll have a couple of other projects in the works. So I'll be announcing those on the websites too. But it's mytruthstartshere.org. This is melissa.com and cleanlifecleanhome.com. Plus on Facebook and on Instagram also. So
amazing. Awesome. Well, I know that you're going to get people wanting to reach out and connect with you. I'm sure so many people have seen themselves in this story and also connected with you in ways that they didn't even know. I mean, we look at you and, from society that looks at this perfect looking, beautiful, gorgeous, stunning blonde woman that, walks around the world, like everything, you've got everything at your disposal. I'm sure people look at you and think, oh, I wish I had what she had. And yet amazing. You would never know that underneath all of that is a woman who was really struggling with anxiety and that used alcohol as your drug of choice to numb and to silence the voices and to help that, uneasy feeling better in your skin. It's a relatable story, something that I know a lot of us have experience with. And knowing that you have been able to overcome is going to give hope to other people that they can too. So Melissa Johnson, thank you. I honor you. It's been a privilege talking to you. I really just admire and respect you so much. Keep doing your amazing work. It matters. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Excellent. So now I want to ask you a few rapid fire questions. We're going to weave these either into the interview, or we're going to just do them in a different way afterwards. We haven't quite decided what we're going to do with them, but
Okay.
Here we go. You ready?
Yes.
What is your favorite swear word?
Fuck. I say fuck all the time.
It's the best one. And so far, everybody except for Ann Dowsett Johnston, it has been fuck for everybody else so far too. I love it. It's mine too.
Yes.
What is the best thing about being sober?
It's my relationship with my children for sure. It's just being present with them and just seeing how much they trust me. They want to be home all the time. They want their friends here, and that's a good feeling because I know that if I was drinking, like it wouldn't be like that. Well, first off, if I was drinking, I wouldn't have my kids. But just my relationship with them, our bond is so much stronger. Just seeing how far we've come, it's a big deal. It makes me feel good.
It's a big deal because you're not raising children, you're raising adults.
Yeah.
You are raising people to then go off and be into the world in a way that they are going to be stronger and more centered and more grounded. And they're going to be more aware of all the shit that goes on in this world. And they're going to be able to deal with it in such a better way than the parent that shelters them. And not that that's, we don't all want to do this to our kids, but I'm just saying, like, it's powerful. And I love that you're owning your story. You're not hiding from it. You're not shy about it. You're owning it and you're sharing it with other people, whatever that, that voice was it spirit, higher power, God, yourself, intuition, doesn't matter. But the fact that you're on this path now, sharing this story is beautiful, and it's what's needed. So I am so excited to find out about your upcoming projects down the road. That's awesome. I have two more for you. What are some of your favorite sobriety tools?
I would say, podcast. Whenever I got sober, whenever I got my kids taken away the second time, I found podcasts, and it was the Bubble Hour. Like my daughter slept with me whenever they got taken away, and so it was really hard to sleep in my bed. And I remember many nights not being able to sleep, laying on my couch listening to the Bubble Hour, and I couldn't believe I had never found podcasts before then. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So it's been podcasts, but it's also been connecting with other women in recovery, and not even just in recovery, just having that tribe of women that I can reach out to. It's been a huge blessing, and I'm so grateful for it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I relate to that too. I find that for me, I was usually friends with guys because it was easier. It was just easier for me when I was a teenager, just hanging out with the boys and not really connecting with women in a very real way. So for me, I relate to that so strongly that in recovery, it's been huge for me to be able to actually feel like I have sisters and a tribe of women that I trust and that I love and that I respect and admire. It's been huge for me too. I love that tool. And last question, what do you know for sure?
I know for sure that I cannot ever drink again. If I want to have the life that I have right now and I want to continue moving forward, I can't. I can never go back. I already know what that road goes. I know what that road leads to. I want to, I don't know where this road goes to, but I know it's so much better than the other one. That's
It's
what
so true, right? Like, yeah, like we how many more parties could there be? How many more situations, like even at those times where even 16 years for me into sobriety, where there are still those times, like I was just in Mexico at Christmas and seeing the alcohol everywhere and everyone getting drunk, and there's still those moments where I'm just like, oh, I just want that feeling again.
I liked your blog about your trip to Mexico, about putting your cell phone away. I really liked that a lot. It was
Mm-hmm.
good. That was good stuff.
Yeah, I needed to do that. And I'm really glad I did. I'd never done that before. I got onto social media late. I started a Facebook account probably 10, 12 years ago, and I shut it down after 3 weeks because all these people were like, hey, what are you up to now? And I'm like, oh my God, like that'll mean I'll have to share with them. I don't want them to know what I'm all about. So I was like, fuck that. So I was like, I deleted my Facebook account. I was like, no way. And then it was only when I started my blog in 2015 that I finally, just prior to that, I got back on social media and I started sharing, and I finally shared the truth of my life. And it's just been completely like my life over here. I don't even recognize the drinking life really anymore. Like it's really hard to even go back there to think about what that life is like. Not that it wouldn't be easy for me to just go right, like you can feel how you could just easily go over there and do that because we know it. And like you say, you don't know what's necessarily around the corner in this amazing, beautiful, crazy, scary life of recovery, but we know that it's a hell of a lot better no matter what than what's behind us. It's so much better.
Yes.
I love it. All right. Well, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much. I have loved this time with you. Thank you for spending it with me. I mean it when I say that you are an inspiration. What you're doing is incredibly powerful, and I just admire you so much for all the work you're doing. You're awesome.
Thank you so much for thinking of me for this. I love it. This is awesome.
To get access to all of the free videos and interviews, visit sobrietystartshere.com.